Windsor West.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Premier. Premier, yesterday your Minister of Education said funding cuts to schools were, quote, preposterous. But behind closed doors, the Liberals are saying the exact opposite. Internal documents show that schools face cuts of up to 2% under the Liberals' next budget. That means cuts to special education and ESL programs for the most vulnerable kids. It means more school closures, and it means job cuts for education workers. Speaker, when will the Premier stand up and finally admit that she wants to cut 2% or up to $500 million from schools across the province?
Well, Mr. Speaker, just to repeat what the Minister of Education has said repeatedly, our government has increased school funding to about $22.5 billion this year, Mr. Speaker. We continue to increase funding. That's a 56.5% increase since 2003. And, Mr. Speaker, that's in the face of declining enrollment. So not only have we increased funding, but we've actually increased per-pupil funding when there are fewer students in the system, Mr. Speaker. So we have done that. We will continue to increase the funding to make sure that boards have the resources that they need. But, Mr. Speaker, those local decisions are just that. They have to be made locally. That's why school boards exist, Mr. Speaker. And I believe in school boards. I believe that trustees have a very important role to play. And that role is to make those local decisions that are in the best interest of the kids in their community, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Speaker. Premier, I'd like to point out that because of Liberal waste and scandal, and because of chronic underfunding of education, you forced trustees to close schools. Speaker, under the Education Act, the minister has a responsibility to close the gaps in student achievement, but Liberal cuts to education will only make those gaps grow even wider. The TDSB is already cutting 50 special education teachers and support staff because of Liberal cuts. That means larger class sizes and less support for the most vulnerable kids. Across the province, $500 million in cuts will pull the rug out from underneath students in every community. Speaker, how can this government defend cuts to education that fly in the face of its responsibility to students?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as we continue to increase funding across the province, Mr. Speaker, we will work with boards to make sure that they are able to make the decisions that are in the best interest of students. And that includes, Mr. Speaker, decisions around consolidation of schools, Mr. Speaker. You know, the fact is that we have built 725 new schools in this province, Mr. Speaker, and more than 700 additions and renovations. And if the member opposite from Hamilton, I think, who was heckling, if she understood that the fact is that populations change, that school boards have to adapt to those populations, and they have to make decisions to deliver the best program to students. And sometimes that means renovating a school, sometimes it means consolidating two schools, sometimes it means closing one school and building a new school, Mr. Speaker. All of those options are things that school boards look at, and that's how you get the best program delivery at the local level for students.